I want to talk about 6 things that you need to think about before you decide to leave the United States on a short-term basis if you want to just get away for a while, say a year or less being short-term. And now, before I go into this, I want to say real fast, once you get done clicking through all the videos of all the things and reading all the blogs about how wonderful it might be in all these various countries, I can pretty much drill it down to 5 different kinds of videos and types of people you're going to see doing content. Number 1 is going to be the digital nomad, remote worker / I've been all over the place and I usually am there for a little bit of a time. And I've got this to say about what was good or bad about a country I lived in some very shallow sense, like, here I was able to, whatever. Some of them will be a little deeper. They tried to live there. But if you look on their channel and they've been to 15 different places over the last 10 years or something like that, that might not be a person that knows in depth much about it. The second part of that would be people that are in the same boat that have stayed for about a year, but they tend to get a little deeper into it. And the way you can do this is look how many videos in a row literally have they been there. You can check them out. I would say check out the source. Don't just look at this is what went wrong or this is what was wonderful about it, because these relatively short-term experiences don't really tell you too much. Okay, so that's first 2. And then the second 2 you're going to have are the longer-term people, the people that do go to a country and stay, say, 1 to 3, maybe longer amounts of years there and, maybe get some light residency or something like that, but whatever. So those kind of people are going to follow basically into 2. One is going to be that they eventually just get tired of it and miss home and get tired of not having around certain things or whatever it might be, or weary of the conditions of the land, and then they bail and they leave. Others will have some kind of, they've totally got it going on. They've been there for a long time. They tell you about the everyday stuff, and they can be a lot more informative. But even within this bunch, you really have to look into who they are. If they're overly rosy, if they ever had a bad experience, if they're overly negative, do they have anything good to say about it? And then how long were they really there? All right. Then the last category is going to be the ones that just do general information about digital nomads, remote working. Do you want to get out of the United States? Maybe it's a financially based, maybe it's lifestyle based. And again, with these people, you want to do the same kind of thing to some degree. How long have they been in the exact space that applies to what you want to do and not generally speaking, because it's the generally speaking that catches up with you when you're out there. This is once you get done clicking on all those fancy videos, making your mind up of where you want to go. These are the things that I wish I had maybe thought of before I left 6 years ago. And then what I've found off and on, I lived here in Colombia for about a year before I came back, and I've been here now for 4. The only other time I was gone, I was in Mexico the entire time. So I can talk a little bit about both of those as we go along. The first thing you want to do before you even, start thinking about buying plane tickets, is make sure that you have fully funded at least a portion of this endeavor. Preferably, if you have it, a whole year. That'd be great. That would allow you to go there and just enjoy stuff, perhaps. If you're remote working, I would shift that down to at least about 3, 4, maybe more months, just in case. You never know. There could be cash disruptions. You don't want to run into a financial bind in a foreign country. Okay, now so easy access to cash is the next one. This is going to be the one that catches a lot of people off guard. Just because you have a gold Visa, whatever card, doesn't mean it's going to be accepted everywhere. Generally speaking, it will be, but what if you need cash? Yes, there's ATMs and there's all kinds of tricks on that for, the exchange rate, and there's ways of doing that. And generally speaking, those work out just fine. But this would be something you want to find out a little bit about before you go there. With Colombia and Mexico, and like I said, probably most places, your regular cards will work just fine, but it doesn't mean it'll work in a restaurant. Particularly around here in Colombia, they might not take cash, or in a small tienda, one of the small stores. They'll only take cash in the local wire service. It's for Colombian citizens from bank account to bank account. So in that case, you're going to need efectivo, which is what they call cash in both those 2 countries. And I'm sure most of what I'm saying applies in some way or another to any other country you're going to go to. To do that, you're going to have to go to an ATM. And here in Colombia, just I can tell you, as it does in Mexico, your card works just fine. And there's people out there that say, oh my God, the exchange rate. But if it's coming down to $5 and $10 and making up your decisions, then, this, again, I'm not saying that's one way or the other, but you can get the cash that way. You can also wire it to your Western Unions from your bank account in the States. Sometimes there's some hurdles. Your bank might freak out. You might get a phone call from your credit card saying, did you really do this? Things like that. But that does work too. And that's primarily the way that I do it, except I do it directly to a bank account that I have set up in Colombia. But you can't even open that until you are a resident like I am. So that's not something you're going to be able to do right off the bat. You could go do it to a local location and that will work. You could pick up the cash. There's other things such as Wise and things like that where you can transfer money to be, to have transferred to the country. But again, what's going to happen there is where's it going? And so you're going to have an answer for that. There are international cards. I used to use Revolut for a number of years before my bank simply stopped working with it a couple of years ago, my Georgia-based bank, Georgia United States-based bank. So I no longer have the Revolut card, but what I do have is 2 copies. I have 2 different bank accounts or accounts at the same bank in the United States just for cash. And so in case I lose one of the cards, I'm not locked out. And then plus I also have it on my phone so I can do the phone payments. So you're going to want to answer come up with as many ways as you could possibly come up with to have cash easily available. And one thing you could throw in here is an emergency plan for the way home. And this would be why the cash should be there. Just in case, can I buy a plane ticket tomorrow, no matter how much it is? Well, can I buy a one-way ticket to where I'm going tomorrow and have that cash readily available right now? Because you never know. You might get sick. You might need to return. Who knows? Anything can happen when you're out there in the world. Assume you'll lose your phone. I had it stolen right off my person, and I didn't even know it. It was in the front inner pocket of my jean jacket. And I was at an event, and there was dancing going on because there was, all this music playing. And I was at the back of this outdoor event, and I got bumped into a few times in the right way. I think it was a setup, but they got it. And so that happened, and that was a big deal. Thank God I had my Revolut card in those days. And of course, I had my regular cards, but I couldn't transfer bank account and stuff. That's another thing with when you're financial. Make sure you have the login on your phone and on a computer. If you have a laptop with you, make sure you have access to your cash. Digital copies of things like passports would be great to have. You're going to have your paper one with you either way. Same thing with all your ID cards. If you're a veteran, get your digital copy of your veteran's card. Take photos of them, put them into something like a Google Drive that you're going to be able to access from either your phone or from a computer, or God forbid you lose both. You could still find a public computer or somehow emergency services, go to the embassy. Somehow you're going to be able to get access to at least a copy, even if it's only a PDF, to get you started, to show people, who you are, to prove who you are. And that is huge. The paperwork thing out there in the world, there's nothing like being at a gate and they want to see this paperwork or who knows where, and you don't know what folder it's in. If you can log into a G Drive or something like that, and there's all your documents there, that really helps out a lot. And so the backup access to things like emails and logins, that's up to you. Figure out to have some secret squirreled away file somewhere, name something silly, grandma's birthday, and put stuff like that in there. The way that I do it, I actually have a coded language that I sort of made up and I've been using for years. And so I write it all in that. So even if somebody did find it, it wouldn't take them much if they were professional, but it's not as easy as looking at it and saying, oh, this is that and this is that. It's not like that. So assume you're going to lose your phone. I'm not saying this as if to forecast doom, but if you're prepared, it changes the ballgame completely. Solve the communication problem before you leave. Now, if you don't have a phone that has some international plan, and most people probably don't because that's pretty expensive, and even when you get there, make sure you know if you're going to use it. It's a crazy roaming charge. You never know. And the last thing all of a sudden, $700 bill comes. I've heard her stories of this. After they've been in the country for a month or 3 months, and all of a sudden their phone company back home's like, wait, we just got hit with this major, whatever. So know that. What I've done is when I left the United States, I left my U.S. number there, and I had Google Voice. And so I have that over Google, and it works everywhere so long as I'm in Wi-Fi, and it's still a United States phone number. Now, if you don't have Wi-Fi, it still works over cellular if it's on your phone, and you can also use it through your computer. It's not always going to work for the authentication, two-form of verification when they send you a number. Sometimes it'll say they don't accept via voice over IP, including, oddly, some online-only companies, which to me is mind-boggling. But anyway, you want to make sure you have some solution before you get there. Depending on where you're going, you might be able just to walk up to the phone company and get a phone. In Mexico, it was easy. I walked into Telcel in Oaxaca one day right after I got there. The second time I was there, walked out 15 minutes later, I had a Mexican phone number, Mexican SIM card in there, and it was cheap, had fast Wi-Fi on it. I could tether it to my laptop if I wanted to, and it worked for me the entire year that I was there that time. In Colombia, it's not the same. The first time I was in Colombia, I got my phone in Medellin, and at the end of the first billing period, it locked. And I didn't know, and I don't know all the particulars on this because I think it might change a lot, like things in Colombia typically do, but it had something to do with phones being stolen and phones registering numbers and out of country whatever machinery, and the country itself does that after that. You have to go in and prove who you are. And I had to actually take a Colombian with me in there and have them vouch for me and all this. It was really eye-opening. I had no idea that was coming, and they didn't tell me that when I went and got my phone. Of course, the only way I got my phone is I literally went to a kiosk on the street with like a vendor. It was really, it's the way it's done, but to me, it just didn't seem effective. Now, the second time I came to Colombia, when my phone was, well, excuse me, when I was here the second time, the phone was stolen. That time I did go into Claro, which is the name of the phone company that I have. That was a completely different experience. It was like being in any Verizon or anything like that back in the States. They took care of the problem, no problem. Took care of the thing, no problem. And, after talking to 15 different people, I was able to get that resolved. So they do have that. I just didn't realize that when I was first here because, your first day in a foreign country, you're like, hey, I don't know what's going on. I had Colombians I met right off the bat that helped with that. And so Wi-Fi is the same thing. Most places you go, Airbnb, hotels, things like that, they're going to have that capability there already. But if you're at a bus stop, you're out in the middle of nowhere, you don't want to have a way you can connect to the internet. Things like Uber and all that here in Colombia and in Mexico are super safe. You can absolutely use that, no problem. Taxis is the same thing. They're safe. Now, I'm not going to say that for everywhere in the world because there are some times when you hear about tourist-heavy areas like in Bogota and maybe even, say, in Cartagena, where they have, taxi drivers somehow involved in something. But that is so rare. It's not. And again, if you see 5 videos on that, it's probably only 5 times it happened in 10 years, or whatever. I don't know. That's an exaggeration, but you get my drift. It's a lightning striking type of thing. It's not really that common. There's much more things that you're going to get, much more exposure you're going to get to potentially bad things in other areas, which we'll talk about coming up here. You want to blend in. You want to blend in and you don't want to stand out. Okay, it's your choice. That's what this is saying here. You want to look dress like a local. This is about as loud as I ever get. I've got a Rolling Stones t-shirt on, and that's okay. All right, but it's not super loud. Doesn't have colors flashing all over the place. It's just a simple little Rolling Stone thing on the front. That's all there is. And even that is loud. Because down here, at least in Colombia, everybody basically wears very bland. I mean, it's nice looking. Don't get me wrong. But there's no writing on it. There's no life by bumper sticker here. You're not going to see bumper stickers on cars, windows, yard signs, people like that. They don't broadcast. And jeans or black pants. You're not going to see people running around in tennis shoes. You're not going to see people, well, tennis shoes, yes, but not with shorts and tennis shoes and, a white t-shirt and a ball cap. If it is, I mean, Colombians do that, but that is a guy on his day off. Okay, or retired. And so that's, when I first got here, I was told that only kids wear shorts, unless it's a holiday or at the pool. And so dress like a local unless you want to stand out, and also what you don't want to do is be that guy walking down the street. Look at all this behind me, taking pictures. Oh, look at these people. Yeah, you can do that. And you can make a fancy video, and maybe you then will have a bad experience and make a nasty video about how horrible your experience in Colombia was. That's because you walked around like with a damn target on your back. It's an opportunistic crime is what mostly happens here. This is not a situation where they're going to be watching you and calculating your every move and waiting to scoop you up and take you to the jungle. No, they're going to see some person that's totally distracted by everything else in the world, flashing all kinds of stuff, like there's their iPhone or iWatch and their iPhone, and whatever else going on. They're paying attention to everything in the world except the guy that's going to walk up behind them and maybe trip them, and as they fall, grab the phone and run off. As simple as that, okay? And now you're out of phone. And so don't be that guy. No flashy gear. Don't walk around distracted. Pay attention. Have your situation awareness there. Not trying to scare you, but act the same you would in many places in the United States that you might think of as being dangerous, because I guarantee you this is not as dangerous as that, where I am, particularly here in Eje Cafetero, the coffee region of Colombia. So keep it simple. Your will, excuse me. And remember, you're going to struggle at first. There's going to be some frustrations. Now, again, I'm not saying everybody, but most likely there's going to be that thing that happens because it's a completely different world. This isn't like going to U.S. light, or they know how things are back in the U.S. They don't know anything. I was once told at a sports bar here 2 Super Bowls ago when I asked they're going to show it, what is the Super Bowl? Okay, that's how far away you are from an English-speaking country and everything you know. And they don't know anything about that. So don't assume anything like that. All right. So you got to learn some very basics in phrasing. This would really help, hola, adios, and find out even maybe appropriately how they say thank you there. In Mexico, it would be de nada. Here it's more con mucho gusto. And so there's different ways of saying things. The more of those little tricks you have, the easier it's just the people are going to feel about you. You're not going to stand out. They don't really care who you are until you broadcast yourself as something hey, why are you nobody's broadcasting themselves. Don't so if you can learn anything like that, and even if you don't, if you try, or if you just say, no habla español, inglés, just basically say some form of, I don't speak Spanish, I speak English, they'll know, and they'll know you're a tourist, and they're not gonna have a problem with that. But there might even be a few words they know. So you just got to figure that out. But the more you know, the better. It's better to start struggling to say, where's the bathroom, to at least know it's called a baños or baño, depending. And so little things like that. Bebidas, comida for drinks and food. I'm rattling these off because they're relatively easy for me, though I don't speak fluent Spanish, but these words I use all the time. And most of those words I knew within the first couple of years of being here, or at least within the first couple of weeks on Earth. One of the first things I had to do was I forced myself to go to an empanada stand each day and order a different kind of empanada, just so I learned what the different ones were and different ways of communicating. The woman there at the place selling them in Medellin, she figured this out. She started teaching me, and she wouldn't give it to me until I said it the right way. And then eventually she had me start teaching her how to say them in English. It was really an interesting experience. But see, keeping it simple, be unassuming, and be humble, and just be you. And they'll be them. It's not scary, but try. Google Translate's a big one. I have my phone right here. I do it all the time. I just open it up and I'll say, oh my God, how do I say, what aisle is the dish soap in, or something like that. And I'll look at it, I'll have a basic idea, and I'll go say it. And they'll know. They'll know what I'm trying to say. They're not going to twist your arm. It's not going to be like in the States. Get this. When my wife lived in the States, when she was there on a work visa, she was Colombian. She tried to order a gin and tonic at a restaurant. She tells the story. And she would say gin and tonic. Okay, gin, because the I is like an E sound, gin and tonic. And she never actually got through to this guy, some bartender in Baltimore. He couldn't figure out what she was saying. I'd guarantee you, if I went in there with the sloppiest English in the world, not that I would go to a bar, but if I did, they would figure it out eventually. They would work with you. So I thought that was strange to happen the other way, like that. I expected more of that here. Well, I not expected, but I wouldn't have been surprised. But I've not had any negative blowback from single Colombian in 6 years that I've lived here. I've not had a single negative encounter. I mean, I've been fortunate, or I don't know, but it's gone great. And so expect friction, though. There's going to be problems. I've had plenty of times where I have people working in the yard. We've lived in places for a long time, and I just don't like the way maybe things are going. But that's me. That's not them. They're doing everything just as Colombia has always done it. It's my American expectation. And wait a minute, what do you mean Thursday to Saturday? Can you narrow it down so that you're going to tear up the yard or something like that? For us, that's a little, but for here, it's completely normal. And I had to remember that, and I still struggle with it. It's still, you can't beat that out of us or whatever. I mean, so you got to expect a little bit of blowback. And that's why in the earlier video, which I'll put here, if you're planning on moving longer than short term, you should at least come to a place like Colombia or Mexico or anywhere and stay for 6 months. Give it a shot. Because after about that 4th or 5th month, when it turns from tourist to I live here now, I'm noticed. I'm starting to feel like I live here. That sort of honeymoon phase wears away. The beauty of it stays, but so does the reality of every single problem that you thought you left, depending. I mean, most of them are still going to be there. You're still going to have to come up with money each month. You're going to have to pay the bills. They're just going to change flavor. And so you got to expect it's not just grass is always greener on the other side. So some of that's friction too. When you realize that, oh my gosh, I am here. Everything's half as much. I've got all this other chaos in my life. Did I want that in exchange for whatever I'm leaving? Because it is different, and you're not living at home anymore, and it is certainly not Kansas. So this is that part I was just talking about. Daily life novelty, that runs away. Now it's just like, this is my everyday. What do I do? If it started out the first 3 months, it was about going out and having a good time and seeing all the sights. Well, they're still there, but so are you. And how long are you going to do that? So you can do it forever, but you get my drift. Groceries, bills, logistics, these are all those things you get to figure out. Haitian, costs are very inexpensive here. When I lived in Pereira for 3 years, well, you lived there for about 3 years solid and one stretch, same apartment, and 2 years. And I used Uber everywhere I went. It was $1.25 no matter how far I went. And so even if I went somewhere every single day, what is that? My entire weekly thing is like 30, $35 in transportation. And it picks me up at my front door and takes me right where I go. And when I'm done, wherever I'm at, it is pick me up right here. It takes me right home. I mean, it's very easy to get around, but it's going to also be something that you have to remember, to take care of. And yeah, here's 3 weeks you're living here. I'd say I put that there for the people who are just short term. But really, if you're thinking about making a lot short term, what I mean there is you just want to get away for a year. Say, hey, I've got a situation here where I can handle covering rent at home. If I turn off my utilities, I'm going to go somewhere and immerse myself somewhere for a year. This is the crowd I'm speaking to today, mostly. And after 3 weeks, it could be sort of like you're living here in that sense, but not living here in the sense of 4 or 5, 6 months if you have moved and you don't have a place to go back to, because that starts to feel different. Now it's not like, oh, I just got to hop on a plane, grab my bag, and I'll be back home. What if there is no back home? What if you sold everything and retired abroad? Or did like me and still you're a remote worker, but you don't have any U.S. possessions at all other than a bank account? There's no going home in that sense. So you have to be in it. So do you want to do it? It's worth it, but it's not easy. I will say it is definitely worth it. And it is not easy. It is fun at times, and it is a drag at times. But so too is life, no matter where you're going to live. Would I trade it for another place? No. I'm looking right now at literally coffee right outside of my window, and over there I can see the Andes. I mean, I'm living on a postcard, and it never changes. The weather's like this every single day. And so preparation is going to equal your freedom in all this. Prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. I had a drill sergeant teach me that in basic training back in 1985 in Fort Benning, Georgia. I've never forgotten it, and it is key. So that's the reality of it. I'm not trying to trash other video content creators out there. I think everybody does their thing. That's great. But when you're looking for yourself for information, check out who the people are. What has been their experience through this whole thing? Maybe as much as you even can. Where'd they come from? Why'd they go on the road in the first place? Especially if this is going to be your guide, so to speak, on where you're going to go and potentially end up living. You don't know. So, I'd hate to find out that the person you did is like they've only been in the country for like 3 weeks and they spent, 2 days in each one of the places. And one of the places is where you went and they had a great thing they said about it. Off you go, and maybe it is great. But whether it's great or not great in the end is going to come down to how prepared you are to be there, how willing you are to do what you need to do to keep yourself afloat. Everything from psychologically to spiritually to physically active. I mean, there's a lot of bases you have to cover. And, but again, that's life. And every day is a challenge. And that's the best part of it. It allows us to keep growing, even if we're not at home, so to speak. So with that out of the way, I just want to drop this real fast today. We got some stuff coming up on Friday. I might talk to my brother Troy about this at the end. We're going to get back to some fun Gen X stuff on Friday. And then next week, we'll be back with more. As always, continuing the conversation mostly that we just put out yesterday on Free Will Burnham podcast on what Gen X women think. What women think of Gen X men. Till next time, everybody, take it easy, man.
Must leave you for a seat.